my job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
This is The World with me, Jane Secker. Tonight, Valencia is declared a disaster zone after flash floods killed more than 150 people. Across the city, there are scenes of utter devastation. We report from the worst-hit area of Paiporta.
This road is completely blocked. But this story isn't about possessions. At the end of this row of houses, there was a couple who were caught in their car when the water rushed through, and they both drowned.
I'll take you around the towns torn apart with people cut off because of collapsed bridges and dealing with unimaginable damage to their homes.
We couldn't save anything from the first floor. The second and third floor are hopefully okay, but this is something you see maybe in the movies, in the news, and you never expect this to happen to us.
After the storm, anger over the lack of help and also fears that the worst may still lie ahead, with more rain already coming down tonight. And amid this mass tragedy, amazing stories of survival, including the moment this baby's life was saved. That's all coming up on The World with me, Jane Secker. Hello, good evening. You join us in the region of Valencia. We're here after floods killed over 150 people. The Prime Minister has described this place as a disaster zone and warned that the worst could still be to come. Tonight, those fears have been realised. You may see the thunder, the lightning, heavy downpours in this area already hit. New weather warnings are in place for the worst affected areas of the country, parts of the southwest and the eastern coast. Valencia has seen the highest concentration of flooding. The worst affected areas are concentrated underneath La Rambla del Pollo, the main drainage channel off the Turia River. It's seen a massive level of overflowing water. The town of Chiva saw an entire year's worth of rain fall in just 8 hours. Well, today we deployed teams across the region. I've spent part of the day in Picaña, taking in the scale of the destruction there. I've also passed through Paiporta this afternoon and seen some of the clean-up operation. Now, because of the intense rainfall this evening, we've moved south to Santa Marina. And in tonight's special programme, we'll hear from our Europe correspondent, Siobhan Robbins, who's in La Sidia, south of Valencia. But first, Sky's Adam Parsons reports from Porta, the worst affected district in southern Valencia.
The scale of destruction in this region is breathtaking. Homes ruined, lives wrecked. Cars are strewn all over these roads, and the number of deaths has crept up remorselessly. Paco is stunned. He showed us the damage to his workshop business. This is how high the water got, he said, up to the black marks on the wall. We've lost the business, all of these cars. We lost everything because of the flooding. We've been ruined. These girls want to show us this. Their father is now a hero. He rescues someone when this street turned into a river. The man struggling to stay alive is a local. He's called Luis. A rope is thrown to him and he clings on desperately. You can sense his desperation and hear the shouts of encouragement. And eventually, he is pulled up to safety, a survivor. What bewildered people here was the suddenness.
It was horrible and too fast. All happens too fast. In just 1 minute, water comes from nothing to up to 2 meters high.
This is the town that was hit hardest, Porta, where dozens have been killed. Well, here's a very good gauge of what happened here. They've spent the morning pumping out this garage, but look, the water is still about 1 metre deep and everything there is ruined. Now, as this torrent came through here, it threw all these cars together and this road is completely blocked. But this story isn't about possessions. At the end of this row of houses, there was a couple who were caught in their car when the water rushed through, and they both drowned. Every road is scarred. Cars were simply thrown around by these floodwaters. This was nature at its most vicious, leaving the residents here desperate for help and reassurance.
I want to tell you that the government of Spain is here to provide you with any additional resources you may need. I said it yesterday. We are not going to leave the Valencians alone. We're going to be with you for as long as it takes.
Rebuilding this destruction will take years. More bodies are still being found. But there are slivers of hope. A baby winched to safety from the wreckage of her home. But it is a fleeting moment of joy in a day of awful sadness. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Porta in eastern Spain.
Well, our Europe correspondent Siobhan Robbins has now moved on to La Sidia, which is south of Valencia, and she joins me now. And Siobhan, we were actually not very far from where you are now a short while ago, but the rain was just so biblical, we had to turn back. The roads were all of a sudden flooding very, very quickly. How badly is that area affected?
That's exactly right, Jane. If you have a look behind me, you can see we're in the main street here. This is some of the debris that's been washed along this street, and there are piles of this up and down the road. They've spent much of the day, much of yesterday, cleaning up, but you can see how bad the damage is. And actually, most of today I've been spending up the road in Algemessi, where people have been living in worse scenes than this one. And what we noticed was frustration is growing. Have a listen.
In Algemessi, people are angry. The suburb of Raval was one of the worst hit, but residents feel abandoned. When the alert came, the water was already 2 meters high, shouts Carolina. There was no police, firefighters or the mayor. No one came to rescue us. The distress is echoed street after street. Every home is in ruins, their owners heartbroken. Dolores shows us inside her house. She said the water was up to the ceiling. Because no help came, they've had to hammer holes in the walls to clear the mud. I feel awful. I'm terrified and very afraid. My husband's sick. We need more help, she says. The level of destruction is immense. On the street, we meet Noel with his kids. Yesterday, they had nothing to eat. They're helpless. Right now, there are people who are trapped. The mud's up to their waists, so they can't open the doors. I live on a high floor, so I didn't have a problem with flooding. But I don't have water, light or food, he says. There's a growing feeling of desperation. Someone shouts food, and people grab what they can.
There's so much destruction here, and at a time when people are at the most at need, they feel frustrated and alone.
In a nearby shelter, we meet people from Algemesí made homeless by the flood. Carol's never felt so hopeless. There was a tree trunk that came into the front of my house. There's no walls, there's no ceilings. I don't have anything. There's nothing, she cries. The trauma of this natural disaster has been compounded in the aftermath by a feeling of loss and loneliness.
And Siobhan, I mean, do you think the danger has passed tonight? Because the rain certainly is still coming down.
Yeah, well, there are still 5 regions with weather warnings in place. They have dropped, so at its very worst, it was red. Now they're orange and yellow. But as you say, in the last hour, the rain has absolutely been hammering down here. We were taking shelter, actually, in a car park behind. And even just spending the last few days looking at the damage, we were asking, what happens if the flood comes in? Is there somewhere we can go higher up? And that just echoes probably what people here are feeling, because when I've spoken to so many of the flood victims, many of them say they're terrified of there being more rain. So you can only imagine what was going through their heads, because they know that in a matter of minutes things can change here. They have seen the power of Mother Nature firsthand.
Siobhan, thanks very much, and you and the team stay safe as well. Well, all day, me and our team have been travelling across the region to witness the devastation brought about by the floods firsthand. We started the day in Picaña, talking to people there about how their lives were turned upside down. This is a town and municipality with the River Mara that runs through it. Well, this river, over the last 24 hours, has had 3 of its 4 bridges totally washed away. If you look down and see the normal water level for this time of year, this gives you a real understanding of the strength of the water that happened here. You can see that bit of masonry in the middle of the river. That was one of the bridges, just a few hundred metres further up. The bridge further down river, that is also gone now. There is only one bridge left connecting these 2 parts of the town. But also, think about the fact that the water came up so very, very quickly. It came up from that level all the way up to the top of the river banks, and then it topped the river banks and it flooded. We're from Sky News. I'm Jane. Hello. What's your name?
Nice to meet you, Adriana.
Adriana. Tell us what happened here.
I mean, here we have the river. It came, everything. It went. It was flooded, everything. So we come across the home. We couldn't save anything from the first floor. The second and third floor are hopefully okay, but we lost everything. This is something you see maybe in the movies, in the news, and you never expect this to happen to us, but finally happened, and yeah, we have to find a new home now, and it's devastating. Yeah.
Your parents must have been terrified.
Yeah, my mother was terrified. She is with our dog, with our pet. Yeah, they were in the last floor. I was calling them. They were just screaming. The water is coming. This has never happened to us. So they were screaming. They were terrified because they think the water could go outside to the third floor. So finally didn't, hopefully. But yeah, it was the sound of the wall falling down was terrible.
The scale of the clean-up operation here is mammoth. There's a children's playground just there, which no children are going to be playing in for a very long time. You can see there's a car which has been forced up against the side of this structure. And just look at all the debris from the foliage that is there as well. And then down on the ground, we can see that. Look, there's some children's toys there, James. Everyone on this street is trying to clear up, but it seems to be an area with a lot of elderly people. There's an elderly lady here. She's been trying to clear up the outside of her property here, just using a sort of garden hoe, you know, wearing really, really thin footwear. And that scene has been repeated down the street. There are tens and tens of people just on this street alone. Rosia, tell us about what happened to you. What was it like yesterday?
Well, it was like a disaster. I can compare it like to the film The Impossible. I think it's quite similar. I live down here, right there, and the thing is that the river took over there and everything was just floated. The water was running like hell. It was a bit crazy and scary.
In terms of what help you've had from the authorities, we haven't seen many around. It seems just to be friends and neighbours who are helping.
Yes. I think that it's quite that the authorities are not here helping us, but I know from sure that in other areas of the town, they are the government, they are helping, but we just saw a firefighter's car, and that is the first one that we see.
Just now?
Yes, now. And it's quite sad because we need help.
Yeah, let me just show you inside one of the properties here. We're just walking along the side of the river where 3 of those 4 bridges have gone. These are the ground floors of most of the houses. A lot of them are garages, but this one, as you can see, from the sofas, from the furniture that had been discarded, was being used for living. The lady's just told us that the force of the water smashed both sets of the big doors that we have outside here, and you can see on the floor, the masonry, how high the water went and the damage it caused inside the property. I mean, I think in the UK we experience flooding sometimes, and you see the horror of what happens when the water comes in and then it recedes and it leaves a tide mark and it leaves a horrible smell and it leaves revolting stuff. But this was coming with such force that it's knocked down walls inside the houses. And, of course, that's going to have an impact on what the people can do in terms of living here. By the side of the old river, they're pulling out their belongings. I don't think they have much hope that they're actually going to be able to salvage any of these things. Mattresses, mirrors, chairs. There's an old coffee pot here. This is just 2 days ago. These were in people's houses. These were normal houses with a beautiful view over a gorgeous river, and now it looks like a tsunami has come through here. And it is really sad to spend time with these people. They're trying to salvage what they can. They're trying to be thankful that they've escaped with their lives. But one lady, she has a 12-year-old son, and her entire ground floor was decimated. And she'd taken all of the family photos, which had been in a drawer, and that drawer had been low down. And she didn't realise, and so she had them all lined up on a pair of stepladders trying to dry them out. And it's heartbreaking, I have to say, seeing the things that people try and save when something like this happens to them and their family. But they were saying this morning that they were thankful because they know that people lost their lives and that they were the lucky ones and that they didn't. Let's return to Siobhan, who's down in Le Sudia. Siobhan, it's been really heartwarming, I have to say, today also to see the people who've been coming to help. A lot of teenagers have been walking down from Valencia with shopping trolleys, with brooms and water and things like that, and them to help. But less heartwarming has been the fact that there's also been looting. We saw it with our own eyes in this town where 62 people had died. Other people were going into shops, were going into Burger King, were going into Lidl and looting. This is a real problem, isn't it?
Yeah, there certainly are rising levels of desperation. As you saw in my piece, when someone shouted food, we saw people going into a local shop and grabbing what they could. Now, we couldn't tell then if they were invited in by the owner or they were simply helping themselves. But certainly lots and lots of people that we've spoken to in cut-off, flood-hit areas have said they don't have food, they don't have water, they don't have electricity. And one man ran past us and just shouted, you know, this is what I have to do to survive. So certainly there are rising levels of desperation, and also, as you saw in my report, rising levels of anger as well. And that's only going to continue over the next few days, especially if we get another downfall and then we get more rising floodwaters in some of those already affected communities. Now, as you said, though, on the other side, we have seen communities coming together to help each other, neighbours helping neighbours, even though they don't really have anything to give them. We spent the morning in a shelter as well, where every few minutes people were coming in to donate clothes, to donate food, members of the Red Cross there going through stuff, giving it to those most in need. Now, in that shelter, they were looking after around 87 people, and some of those people had absolutely nothing. Normally, when you go to a disaster zone or a flood zone, people will show you possibly a carrier bag that they've managed to grab, or a suitcase, or, you know, shove stuff in the car. Here, people seem to have left with absolutely nothing, not even, you know, a coat. Most of them just have the clothes that they've been wearing, a top and some trousers, nothing else. Some of them don't even have shoes. They haven't even managed to have time to grab those basic things. And I think that's what's really surprised me about this flooding, this disaster. All of us have covered multiple natural disasters, whether it's earthquakes, tsunami, volcano, floods. And the thing about this flooding is the scale of destruction, those cars on top of each other that we've seen, houses wiped out. That is something that I'm used to seeing after an earthquake or even on the edges of a tsunami, not in a flood. And that's what people are saying here as well. They feel like a tsunami has come through their community. The devastation is so widespread and affects so many little communities. It feels like it's going to take years for people to rebuild what they've lost.
Because, as you say, Siobhan, it's the fact that it came with such force through residential areas, but also the speed. I was talking to one girl earlier today, and her mum and dad had gone to the shops. They saw that the bad weather was coming, and they'd only got to the shops, you know, a few hundred yards away, and then the rain came down and they couldn't get back home, and they had to go into a stranger's house, and they lost communications with their children who were in another house. And it just seems to have happened so incredibly quickly. People were stranded, people had no means of speaking to each other, and that was terrifying for so many people, wasn't it?
That's exactly it. If we just have a look at this scene here, it's dark now, but you can sort of pick out the debris that's been left in the street, and it goes all the way along this street here. And this is stuff that's been cleaned up. But what's interesting here is that they're nowhere near the river, really. It's not right next to us. It's not backing onto the street. It's much further up in the town. And when we were talking to people, we said, you know, was it the rain coming down that caused the flood here? They said, no, it was the rain filling the river, and then the river suddenly rushed down here. So they really felt like they had no warning whatsoever. And that's a message I know that you've heard from all the people you've been speaking to. We've heard from various people in different towns as well, that there just was no warning. And some people have said to us that they got a few minutes, other people have said 10 minutes. And I think that's also what's fed into the sheer terror which many people are feeling now. If it rains, is this going to happen again? They simply do not know.
Siobhan, thanks so much for the time being. Well, let's talk now to climate scientist Antonio Turiel. Arturo, really good to talk to you this evening. How soon, when you saw these images, you know, you must have had your head in your hands when you saw them. You must have thought that this is what we're going to see more of. Is this now the new normal?
I think this is going to be similar to the normal, unfortunately. And yes, because we are observing that there is a rise in the temperature in the oceans and on the Earth. So the temperature of the Earth now is over 1.5 Celsius degrees above the pre-industrial average, which was the goal not to avoid right to this point by the year 2100. So this implies that this kind of catastrophic events are going to be probably much more frequent because we have a lot more energy in our climate system. And unfortunately, this is going to be probably reproduced again and again, and we should adapt to this.
Do you think there's anything that we can do to reverse this? I mean, is this it now? Or are we just going to simply have to live with much more unpredictable weather patterns?
The funny part of this is it's not completely unpredictable. acceptable, at least in the short term, in the sense that, according to the data produced by the European Centre for Medium-Range Weather Forecast, (ECMWF), over 5 or 6 days before the event, we already knew that something very large was coming. The question is rather that if we want to stop this, we need to make a lot of changes and adjustments, and in particular, we need to adapt the buildings, we need to adapt infrastructures, we need not to build in places that we know that can be flooded. And the other thing is, well, we all know that we should stop with oil, we should stop with fossil fuels in general, we should stop emitting carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. But the problem is that the consequences of doing this are very dire from the economic point of view. So we don't want to do that. But we know that we are leading the planet to a sharp change that can have a lot of non-linear changes. We can cross several tipping points. We can affect all over the planet. But the problem is that we need to be serious in our commitment in order to stop the use of fossil fuels, and this is hard.
So if we are going to have to live with this, what do we need to be doing differently? Do we need to be building differently? Do we need to be thinking about the infrastructure of our cities and our towns differently?
Well, there are many things that we should think about. We should take the lead in changing infrastructures. Maybe there are some infrastructures that should be completely abandoned because there are no hope for them. Maybe replace it for the infrastructure. I think, for instance, in the case of Spain, we have a train track which goes very close to the seashore, and we know that this is going to be erased. It is going to be destroyed. It has been damaged many times now, and we know we are going to lose this. So we should move other place. The question is the cost is very expensive, and we should not build in places that we know that floods are frequent. But at the end, also, we should prepare the population. We should make a lot of pedagogy. We should learn the people to adapt. We are now knowing that many people has been drowned because they were trying to get their cars off of the flood, and then they got flooded with the cars. So this is something that we need to understand, that this is serious. We need to engage in a different way with this problem. We have to learn to live with such situations on a current basis.
Yeah, greater understanding and a greater awareness of how to respond. Antonio Turiel, climate scientist, really good of you to join us tonight. Thank you very much. Well, earlier we brought you Adam's report from Poipota, which is one of the areas worst affected. Dozens of people were killed there. Well, today I was also there talking to people about what they saw and what they lost. This is the normal river level at the moment. It rose up and up and up. It topped the river banks. It went, as you can see on those buildings, across about a metre up above the buildings. It swamped the bridge that's behind us. It took the edge of the bridge off. All of the railings have gone. In the water there is the remains of an articulated lorry. It's just utter devastation, and the people here have woken up today and trying to come to terms with how they can clear up this mess and deal with the fact that many of their neighbours are now no more. This is what we're seeing alongside all of the roads. It's a combination of what the water picked up: plastic bags, flip-flops, soft drinks cans, but bamboo. Bamboo grows naturally in this part of the world, and there is so much of it in this debris, which we've seen here around the base of trees, but we've seen it from the side of the roads. Olive groves, absolutely covered across all of the trees in the olive grove with this horrible, thick, muddy vegetation. If we move up onto the bridge itself, we can get a really clear view of how badly this town has been affected and what's happening now. This bridge is being used. People are coming backwards and forwards to help those who are struggling. We've seen lots of people carrying water. Lots of people have travelled from Valencia to come down and help.
Well, we found many people trying just to save all their houses, their lives somehow.
And what have you been doing today?
Just cleaning up.
Just sweeping?
Asking what do they need, and then after of that, just cleaning and trying to get all the muddy stuff out of the houses.
You can see where the water came down and some of the things it's deposited, as well as an articulated lorry. We can see a skip. There's a whole tree trunk And of course, cars. We've seen so many cars. There are cars there buried in the mud. There are, I think, 3 cars that I can see buried in the mud and 1 just lodged on a barrier right at the top. And so we've heard from people like Andrea just there who've come down here to help. But sadly, we've also seen today quite a lot of looting. There's a little shop and a Burger King not far from here, and the shelves have been totally empty. People just going in and taking what they can, using this opportunity, unfortunately. Alejandra is here. You've travelled down from Valencia today,
yes,
haven't you, with some of your friends?
Some of my friends.
We've seen a lot of teenagers come down here. Why did you want to come?
Well, we have seen the disaster all through the news, so everyone was down helping here. And not these are 3 of my friends, but we have come like a group of 12 friends. We come together, bring some food, lots of water too, because it's a shame. There's a disaster that happened here. More than 100 people missing, and some other, and we are coming here to help, and we're on the way to the center over there.
Yes.
To lend a hand as well.
And a lot of the people that we've seen today who've been affected have been elderly, because I suppose a lot of the elderly people tend to live on the ground floors of buildings in this part of the world. Have they been very grateful to you?
Well, yes, because we live in Valencia, so in Valencia there's lots of buildings with, a lot of floors. But yes, a lot of people here that are elderly, live on the ground floors and have lost most of their home.
Well, Siobhan was talking a little bit earlier about the shelters that she's been in today. Let's talk now to Arturo Valoria de Arana, who's Communications Director for the Valencian region of the Spanish Red Cross, who've been behind a lot of those shelters. Arturo, very good to talk to you this evening. How soon was it that you realised something very, very serious was happening?
Well, good afternoon. Even the eve of the day of that big rain, a big storm, never seen before here in Valencia, we could know that it was going to be a big rainfall. So we start to get ready our teams for urgent response basics in Valencia.
And what help are you able to offer people?
Well, basically what we try to offer all the people who lost and really need this kind of help are basic product, basic goods like kits, hygiene kits, blankets, water, recharging batteries for the mobile phones, also because they must keep in touch with their families and relatives.
And the shelters that you're also operating, how many people are you able to accommodate?
Well, today I've been visiting one of the shelters in Valencia center with more or less 550 people, and more or less the half part of them sleep there. We suppose tonight will be the same number of people will be sleeping there again.
And I can imagine that as welcoming as you guys are, they don't want to be in a shelter. They're obviously going to be keen to get back home or to friends or family. But how long can you actually provide shelter for them?
Well, we are already prepared. We know that's not a short emergency for just a couple, 3 days or 4 days. We are getting ready to reach them, to reach all them this help during the coming days and probably for the next weeks.
And do you think there's anything that could have been done differently that could have helped here? I mean, there's been some criticism of the authorities that warnings perhaps weren't quick enough. What would you say to that?
Well, the question is, it's here in the Mediterranean Sea is really common. There's this kind of rainfall so hard in these these months during the autumns. Every year we have some big rainfalls, and we try to do our best to get ready and to assist all the victims of every rainfall we suffer here in Valencia or any kind of a region of the east coast of Spain.
And do you think perhaps there needs to be, I don't know, maybe more public drills, public information about the best thing to do if a flood happens? Because it does seem that so many of those who lost their lives because they got in their cars and they thought their cars were a safe place. And what this has shown is that actually that was the worst possible decision.
Mm-hmm. Well, the question is that these rainfall episodes are so unpredictable many times, and people risky a lot of times to drive around, or it's quite difficult to measure this kind of these steps they must take in these days so dangerous. It's really difficult for people to measure this kind of dangers.
It is indeed. Arturo Valora de Arana from the Spanish Red Cross, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk to another of those directly impacted by the floods. Joining me now is Nikki Crisp. Now, she's a Briton who's lived in Valencia for over 17 years, and she says her village has been left unrecognisable by the floods. Nikki, good of you to join us this evening. Just tell us, paint a picture for us, really, about what life is like in your village this evening.
Well, things are a little better for some of us tonight. We have had some power restored to the village, and we've also had phone signal. This is so important because it doesn't matter all the civil alerts and everything that's going on and all the information that's being sent out. If you can't access anything by mobile phone or computers or social media groups or whatever, it's just all pointless. So for some of us, things are a lot easier. We are personally still without water, but everyone's helping each other where they can and offering showers and support where possible. But the main part of the village that was affected is the bottom part of Pedralba, and this is the old part of town. And the River Turia broke its banks and flooded the bottom part of town, which is now devastated. And our bridge that it accesses the next village, Villa Marchant, is not passable for traffic any longer at the moment, and so a lot of people are still cut off.
And Nikki, we're looking at these images as you talk to us that you filmed of this torrent of water pouring through your garden. I understand, though, that you were quite aware of the issue of flooding and had taken steps to protect your home. Tell us a little bit about what you did and how you think it helped.
Well, our house is very low-lying, and we get all the water coming from the land higher up behind us. And we'd already been flooded 3 years ago. At that stage, the river and the bottom part of the town hadn't been affected. And so we were badly affected then, probably worse than this time. And so we had to have retaining walls put in at the back, and as you can see in that picture, it's to help the flow of water go down the sides of the house, which did work to a degree, but unfortunately the force was so enormous it broke through. But all we can do is try and prevent the water from coming into the house. That's our aim, and just to let it go on its way. You can't stop it.
But your house, it seems, was a little possibly better protected than some of your neighbours.
Well, we're further away from the river, so our water came off the mountains, whereas obviously the bottom part of Pedralba was affected by the river rising to such enormous heights. There was a few photographs there that I took earlier on of our bridge, and you just can't, unless you're there, you just can't understand what has changed. It was a small river, and now it's just enormous, and the height that the water came up was meters and onto the road, and it just destroying everything in its path. You wouldn't even recognize it as the same place anymore.
Oh, Nikki, it just sounds absolutely terrifying. And it's that combination, isn't it, as you say, of the water coming off the mountains and up from the river at the same time, and the poor people like yourself sandwiched in the middle. Very good of you to join us this evening. Thanks very much, and stay safe.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, that is all from this special programme from Valencia. The rain has eased a little here this evening, which is hopeful for the people living in this area. There are concerns, though, that the bad weather is travelling north up the eastern coast, possibly towards Barcelona. We shall see what the morning brings, but we'll have lots more coverage from here in News at 10, coming up at the top of the hour. But the rest of the day's global stories are coming up after the break with Barbara, so stay tuned.
this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you
to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Welcome back to The World with me, Barbara Serra. Let's turn to the U.S. election now. Just 4 days to go until America decides who will get the keys to the White House. After a row over Joe Biden's comments that Trump supporters were garbage, today Kamala Harris went on the attack. She criticized Donald Trump for comments during a rally where he vowed to be the protector of women, whether they like it or not. Take a listen.
I want to protect the women of our country, they said. They said, sir, I just think it's inappropriate for you to say, pay these guys a lot of money. Can you believe it? I said, well, I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not. I'm going to protect them. I'm going to protect them from migrants coming in. I'm going to protect them from foreign countries that want to hit us with missiles and lots of other things.
It actually is, I think, very offensive to women in terms of not understanding their agency, their authority, their right and their ability to make decisions about their own lives, including their own bodies. And this is just the latest on a series of reveals by the former president of how he thinks about women and their agency.
As we mentioned, just 4 days to go before Election Day, and Kamala Harris has just finished one of her last rallies of her campaign. She is in Phoenix, Arizona. And let's take you live now to Nevada. We're also expecting to hear from Donald Trump in Henderson, Nevada. Live pictures there. Meanwhile, more controversy, this time over Elon Musk's involvement with the Trump campaign. Today, he was supposed to appear in court for a hearing over his $1 million giveaways to swing state voters who sign his online petition. U.S. officials had suggested the giveaways may break electoral law. Elon Musk denies that, though. Let's get the latest now on the campaign trail and speak to our U.S. correspondent, James Matthews, who is in Philadelphia tonight. OK, let's start, first of all, with the tit-for-tat between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump over, that he will protect women, whether they like it or not. Do you think Harris managed to land a blow with the criticism?
Hi, Barbara. She's counting on it. She believes that the content and tone of what Donald Trump has had to say plays into her campaign strengths, a woman's fundamental rights, abortion specifically, and more generally, a woman's right to make decisions about her own life. Donald Trump saying that he has disregarded the guidance of his own advisors before he went on stage and made those remarks. He seems wedded to this strategy of leaning into what they're calling here the bro culture. There are many in the Republican movement who are wary of that and advising against that kind of plan. But there are enough people around Donald Trump who see potential for movement in the young, disaffected male demographic. They believe that the kind of language that he has been using of late can resonate with that particular group. So they see room for late movement before next Tuesday.
And James, let's talk about Elon Musk, who has almost been in the headlines as much as the two presidential contenders. Now, he was supposed to appear in court today for a hearing over the $1 million he has been giving away to Trump supporters, but he didn't show up.
That's right, yeah, he was due, Barbara, in this building behind me. That was the plan for the court of the day, but there was no sign of him. He did not attend. Basically, this is all about these $1 million giveaways. The local district attorney in Philadelphia wants that to stop because he says there's a hard and fast rule. You cannot pay people to vote. You cannot pay people to register to vote. So his lawyers have been arguing in court today that this is an illegal scheme designed to influence the vote, and they want it stopped. Today, it's been locked in legal dispute. The lawyers for Musk, they went before the judge and said, look, this is a federal matter. We want it in federal court. Lawyers for the local DA said, no, it's not federal. We want it back in the state court. So that's where the argument lies right now, Barbara. It's all due to come to a head again or to resume at 10 a.m. tomorrow. We should get an idea of what the direction of this case is around that time, and of course get an indication of whether or not we'll see Elon Musk here.
And James, we just saw Kamala Harris in Arizona. We know that Donald Trump is in Nevada. So the final rallies, what did the last days before polling day look like for the two candidates?
They look very busy. It is a frantic scramble to find that small sliver of people in the middle. Look at the polls, they could not be tighter. And on both sides, there is an established support base. It is a twofold challenge for both, finding the people in the moment, people who might sway their vote, who are as yet undecided, tapping into those demographics, but of course, within the core support, getting the vote out. That's why we will see much activity from both sides over the coming 4 days.
James Matthews with the latest there in Philadelphia. James, thank you. Well, over 60 million people have already cast their votes, smashing a record that was set in 2020. Our correspondent Tom Cheshire has more on those early voters and the latest polling.
Everyone is trying to predict how America will vote, but America has already been voting, and it tells us some quite interesting things. We want to start with the Sky poll tracker first, the average of the most recent polls, and look at how much Harris's lead has narrowed. It's down to 0.4, less than 1 point after that healthy original lead. Now, this doesn't tell us who's going to win. It doesn't have much predictive power at all, apart from saying this is going to be close. So it all comes down to the votes. And this is how many votes have already been cast. 52 million have been mailed in or in-person voting. These are all early votes. There's twice as many people as voted in the entire UK general election. And there's also around 30% of the total votes that were cast in the last presidential election. So this is a really big, significant, important chunk. And there are things we can say about this, because when it comes to early voting, you can break it down by party registration. So we're going to talk about these swing states, the battleground states. These are states where the Republicans seem to have a lead in early voting. Georgia, Arizona and Nevada, healthy red leads. But have a look at this. This is the battleground states where the Democrats are doing well, again, according to early voting. Pennsylvania, that is really interesting because the polling shows that really, really tight, but there's a big Democrat lead. Same for Michigan, really, really tight polling, but again, a Democrat lead. But look at these ones. North Carolina here. That is really, really close. You've got Democrats, Republicans, and unaffiliated in grey, all are more or less the same place. And then Wisconsin, fine, you've got this Democrat lead here, but it is that 41% of votes which are unaffiliated. So really hard to say exactly what's happening in those states. Now, if we take this early voting, and it is just an indication, and we apply it to this race to 270 electoral college votes, you get the votes from the states, you add them to this column, and that's how you become president. Let's do that. According to what the voting is telling us in the early voting, give these states over here, Arizona and Nevada, to Donald Trump. Georgia as well, and you can see what's happened. That's put him up to 252. Let's give Pennsylvania to Harris and Michigan to Harris as well. According to that polling again, we still don't have a winner. Well, let's say Donald Trump wins North Carolina. It is really, really tight. Kamala Harris could go to Wisconsin, win that, and become president by just 2 electoral college votes. That's just how tight this whole thing could be. Now, it is worth noting as well, when it comes to this early voting, is not quite representative of the US electorate. We'll go through here, and this shows the demographic of this. And what you can see is that people aged 65 or over here in the early voting, they're way more represented than they are in the general population. That could favour Donald Trump. Older voters tend to go for the Republicans and Donald Trump. Another thing just to bear in mind when it's on the night itself, let's go back to 2020 and talk again about how early voting is important. So Georgia here, that was won by Joe Biden just by 11,000 votes. Really, really tiny margin. But at one point, Donald Trump was nearly 400,000 votes up because of those early votes being counted first. Or compare it to another battleground state, North Carolina again. At one point, Biden was more than the 400,000 votes up, but Donald Trump came back from that to win by more than 75,000. So when you're watching on the night, you might see a lot of early votes being counted, going for one candidate. Don't say that state has been decided, and don't say that the presidential race has been decided. It is the finest of margins still.
The finest of margins indeed, as Tom was saying. In North Carolina, it is extremely tight. Polling shows that Trump is narrowly ahead with 49% of average vote share. Harris trailing with 48.5%. Our U.S. correspondent Mark Stone has been to North Carolina to get a sense of which way the state could swing next week.
2 different directions, starkly different. At its simplest, that is what this is all about. Kannapolis, North Carolina, is America's suburbia. Middle class, leafy. Donald Trump won this town's district by just 9 votes in 2020.
Trump?
Democrat.
Trump.
I voted for Trump the last 2 times, and I won't do it again.
He won the state by a whisker, 1.3%. It is just the sort of place Harris and the Democrats hope they can grab this time, and it could swing the nation.
I'm going with Trump and Vance,
yeah,
for president.
Yeah, I'm his wife, and I'm going with Harris.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm not a Trumper.
No?
No, we all know what he is. Please.
So there's the divide. There are the judgments. But of the issues driving the decision, one thing dominates, always: the economy. And on one street in this one town, reflections of how people feel. That will determine how they vote. In the Sabor Grill, we meet Riley Mullery, 23, babysitting between jobs.
I went to the store the other day and got a full cart. Usually that costs $150, if that. It was almost $400 for a full cart of just regular household needs. I hope that that can be solved.
The waiter here is 18-year-old William, voting for the first time.
The last time when my grandparents voted for Trump, everything economical was fine. Right now, everything's too expensive for even basic needs families. For families of 4, it's too expensive for them. And all these unemployment rates are way higher than they were before. And it's getting worse and worse.
Here's the thing, though. Prices are coming down. Unemployment is down, too. Perception and reality, they don't match. It's all about how people feel, and for many, what they remember before under Donald Trump.
He did great in the first 4 years he was in there. He was getting results. He was getting things done, what this country needs. He's very rough around the edges, okay, but he knew what he was doing. And I think this time around, now that we've had that 4-year gap without him, and they've seen what happened, the scales tipped a little. Everybody's like, oh, maybe he wasn't that bad.
2 doors up, the West Loop is one of 4 restaurants run by David Deal, a small business owner, just the type both sides want to pull over. His choice is harder.
I'm a small business owner. How business principles and laws are applied mean a lot to me. And I consider myself fiscally conservative, yet socially liberal. I want people to do what makes them happy.
And that provides you with a conundrum, though?
It certainly does.
Over the road at Decadence Popcorn, Dwayne Jackson is the boss.
A lot of the small businesses don't understand tariffs.
And where his neighbors see hope and opportunity, he sees a con, like Trump's plan for tariffs on China, which he believes will push up prices here.
If you're not focusing on what the person is actually saying, then you're going to go according to the gimmicks.
I'm going to suggest that maybe you're saying that Trump is a gimmick.
Yes, I will go on the record as saying that.
You know, the striking difference between this moment 4 years ago and now is the anxiety on both sides. It is underlying, but as everything gets closer, you can really feel it. A country that has been on 2 such starkly different paths for so long. Well, now is their moment to choose. And in these few swing states, these are the towns, these are the people who will decide this election. Mark Stone, Sky News in North Carolina.
And remember, you can join my colleagues Yalda Hakim, Mark Austin, and the rest of the team in Washington for live coverage of the U.S. election on Sky News on Tuesday, the 5th of November. That is it for the program this evening. Thanks very much for watching. News at 10 is next, with more on the floods in Spain and fallout from the budget. See you then. Bye-bye.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.